Hey guys, it's Angelo, and I hope that you had happy holidays and made it safely into 2021. And welcome to the Shadow Priest Mythic Plus in-depth guide for Shadowlands, where we dive deep into the Shadow Priest in Mythic Plus, covering everything you'll need to know in order to play the spec to its fullest in any 5-man environment in World of Warcraft's newest expansion. The Shadow Priest started into this expansion with a heavy burden to carry, a full rework, and a rather difficult time finding footing as a playable spec in Battle for Azeroth. At this point, the spec has a reputation of being underwhelming in Mythic Plus, but today we'll go into detail of why the Shadow Priest is actually very strong in any Mythic Plus environment. When played well, with the right items and the required know-how, the spec can be incredibly strong and can most certainly outcompete most other classes in terms of damage by any considerable margin, even keeping up with current Mythic Plus super picks like Hunters or even Mages. The Shadow Priest also brings some very strong utility along with it, specifically Vampiric Embrace, Mind Soothe, and Mass Dispel, as well as high amounts of self-sustain with spells like Vampiric Touch or Devouring Plague for self-healing, Fade for threat reduction, and various Covenant-specific benefits as well. Now this guide will focus solely on Mythic Plus, meaning everything we discuss here will not directly concern raiding or any other aspect of PvE, but will 100% be related to Mythic Plus. Apart from that, the guide will be structured like any other guide on my channel, so we'll be discussing our stat priority, our talents, and which affixes or dungeons are best for certain talent sets, our conduits, our rotation, and the overall pros and the cons of the spec. Now if you want a detailed guide on the Shadow Priest for current raiding or a detailed damage rotation, then be sure to check out those videos on my channel. The link should be popping up on your screen as I speak. Also, if you want to join the discussion when it comes to anything priest related, be sure to join our Discord server or follow me over on Twitch, with both links in the description box below as well. Good, now that being said, and without any further ado, let's go right ahead and have a look. Alright, let's start us right off with our stat priority. Our stat priority is quite similar to the way we build for raids, if not even identical, and so I personally advise you to sim yourself in order to get your stat weights by using raid bots, but the general rule of thumb is that you will want to go for haste and critical strike, with both being your strongest stats, followed very closely by mastery and then by versatility. With high levels of gear, and depending on the pull you and your group do, mastery may very well pull ahead. Critical strike will be the more plausible option most of the time though, or rather haste and then critical strike. This is also somewhat talent dependent, as various talents benefit from, or rather more from, according stats. Shadow Crash, for example, synergizes with mastery, while Auspicious Spirits goes well with critical strike. Hungering Void and Ancient Madness both get more value out of critical strike, while Surrender to Madness arguably gets more out of mastery, so ultimately the gains are negligible except with the Hungering Void, which benefits tremendously from more critical strike. Okay, on the topic of these different talents, let's move on and actually take a look at all talents and which ones to pick. Alright, let's start us off in the level 15 talent role. Here we have Fortress of the Mind, Death and Madness, and Unfurling Darkness. In this talent role, only one is truly good in Mythic Plus at the moment, which is Death and Madness, as it allows you to carry over a lot of insanity from trash pack to trash pack and just never run out middle of the fight as well. Your level 25 talent role is entirely up to you, but Body and Soul will arguably be the most useful pick here, as both Sand Lane and Intangibility are situational talents. In your level 30 talent role, we have Twist of Fate, Misery, and Searing Nightmare. Searing Nightmare is your only really strong option in Mythic Plus at the moment, with the arguable exception of the Theater of Pain on very high keystone levels, but even here you'd most likely still be playing Searing Nightmare, as it is hands down just your best option. I've discussed this in my Shadow Priest rotation video for the launch patch, so be sure to check that out for more info on how specifically to play Searing Nightmare. Basically though, what makes Searing Nightmare so strong is its ability to provide you with very immediate burst AoE, something that is of the utmost importance in any Mythic Plus environment. In our level 35 talent row, the choice is yours once more, with Last Word and Psychic Horror being the best options most of the time. If your group lacks interrupts, then going with Last Word is a very plausible choice. If your group lacks hard CC during combat, Psychic Horror should help you out. Psychic Horror helps you a lot with the Spiteful affix as well, just keep that in mind, as you can simply stun any ghost coming your way. In the level 40 talent row, we have Auspicious Spirits, Psychic Link, and Shadow Crash. Currently, Shadow Crash is your go-to option, as it synergizes well with Searing Nightmare, provides solid damage and insanity, and requires no ramp-up time. In our level 45 talent row, we have Damnation, Mindbender, and Void Torrent, and here the choice becomes a bit more tricky. Mindbender is good on any Mythic Plus level, as it generates a lot of insanity while only costing 1 global cooldown every minute, meaning you can easily set it up to provide you with insanity to spam Searing Nightmare, while Void Torrent deals absolutely insane amounts of damage and also generates 60 insanity every 30 seconds basically. Now Void Torrent has a shorter cooldown and can be used perfectly to deal tons of damage to bosses or to important targets, like the squad leaders in Spires of Ascension for example, or enemies with Inspiring, but is solely single target, meaning that it won't further your AoE damage and you have to channel it for a full 3 seconds, losing out on a lot of Searing Nightmares in the long run. Ultimately, of course, the choice here should be yours. I personally prefer playing with Void Torrent, as most of my group deals tons of AoE damage anyways, but I do throw in the occasional Mindbender. It's entirely up to you. Now finally, in our level 50 talent row, we have Ancient Madness, Hungering Void, and Surrender to Madness. In Mythic Plus, there are 2 options which have become common over time. Hungering Void for one is quite good because it synergizes with Dissonant Echoes, one of our conduits, and can be used even outside of Void form that way. This gives you a formidable damage increase quite frequently, no matter if you're fighting a boss or a group of ants. Ancient Madness provides you with very bursty Void forms, which can be very helpful during fortified weeks when very important and specific trash packs need to die quickly, or when you have to deal with a prideful as fast as possible and want to burst it down. You will most likely be playing Hungering Void most of the time, but you do want to keep Ancient Madness in mind for its strengths. Overall, our Mythic Plus talents are quite straightforward this time though. They don't offer too much wiggle room at the moment, but that's perfectly fine. Next, let's take a quick look at our conduits and our Soulbinds. Now, due to people playing all different covenants, I'm not specifically going to be talking about which covenant choice is arguably best or worst. That doesn't really matter at this point, but what does matter is that you pick the proper Soulbinds and traits, as well as the correct conduits. Currently, Shadow Priests want to go with Ameni if they're Necrolords, Pelagos if they're Kyrian, Theodore or Nadia as Venthyr, and Dreamweaver or Nia as Night Fae. When it comes to conduits in Mythic Plus, you'll want to be running with Dissonant Echoes, same as for raids, and Haunting Apparitions as your second conduit if you have 2 potency conduits unlocked already. Most of the Covenant picks and conduits are quite straightforward, and there isn't really any room to play around with here. Just be sure to stick to the proper conduits, and honestly you'll be perfectly fine. Okay, next let's take a look at our rotation in Mythic Plus, how it changes, and what to be aware of. Now for a full, in-depth explanation of my rotation, I advise you to take a look at my rotation video. The link should be found on the top right corner of the video now. That being said, for Mythic Plus, there's only a few things that will be different from our regular rotation due to the different talents we'll be playing. Most importantly, let's discuss how to use your cooldowns and how to use Searing Nightmare. Void Form and Power Infusion are essentially used on cooldown and do not have to directly be changed together if you don't have them ready at the same time. During fortified weeks, use your cooldowns on trash packs as much as possible, especially the ones which prove difficult for you and your group. When playing with a hunter or even a very skilled fire mage in your group, you should highly consider giving them your power infusion when they're using their cooldowns, as they will just benefit from it much more than you do, as bad as this sounds. Now, in general Mythic Plus environments, most of your time will be spent using Searing Nightmare to nuke down, or rather to nuke down enemy trash packs as quickly as possible. You will start using Searing Nightmare at 3 targets unless you're using Void Form for them, in which case you can apply Devouring Plagues as frequently as possible, or continue spamming Searing Nightmare depending on how long the 3 targets will live. Once you're at 4 targets however, Searing Nightmare becomes your sole focus, and you will do everything to revolve your playstyle around having as many Searing Nightmares available as possible. This means using Mindbender and Shadow Crash on cooldown, spamming Mindseer in order to cast as many Searing Nightmares as possible. When short on Insanity, you can absolutely make use of your Mind Blasts, your Dissonant Echoes procs, and anything else to help you get another Searing Nightmare out. Once you're at 4 targets, you will be generating enough Insanity to keep Searing Nightmare rolling most of the time with little effort anyway. Again, if you want a full breakdown of the rotation, just be sure to watch my Shadow Priest rotation video, but the basics which were just explained should be quite easy for you to follow. But finally, let's talk about the overall pros and cons of the Shadow Priest in Mythic Plus. All in all, the Shadow Priest is quite decent in Mythic Plus. The spec is able to deal a load of damage, especially in both pure single target as well as on very big trash pulls. With Void Form being a cooldown now every 90 seconds, this allows for us to have heavy on-demand burst when needed, even more so when aligned properly with things like Void Torrent or Mindbender, and paired with Shadow Crash and Searing Nightmare. The spec brings a lot of utility, can deal damage on the move with things like Devouring Plague or Shadow Crash, and requires little to no actual ambient healing from your healer. Yes, there are specs in the game which are simply put just better at Mythic Plus than we are as Shadow Priests, but there aren't that many. If you're willing to try hard, mastering your rotation and your gameplay, and want to push keys, then the Shadow Priest should not be a spec that you shy away from. Unfortunately, the negative stigma which surrounded us in Battle for Azeroth has not entirely vanished, and it can still be difficult getting into actual Mythic Plus pugs. Let me know what you think though. Are you enjoying the Shadow Priest in Mythic Plus so far? I certainly am, and I have actually been pushing my Radar IO score lately, but I'd be excited what you have to say. As always, thank you so much everyone for watching. A special thanks to all of my supporters over on Patreon, as well as all Twitch subscribers, donators, and all other supporters. You guys are awesome. Now, have a good one my friends, enjoy the Shadow Priest and Shadowlands, be sure to push some keys, and I will see you all in the next one.